I never expected my life to become a battlefield. Not in the quiet suburb where every lawn was perfect, every house symmetrical, every neighbor polite. Inside our home, Emily and I lived by rules few outside could understand. Precision, planning, documentation. Every payment, every promise, every detail of life was recorded. It wasn't obsession, it was survival. Then Brian arrived. Charismatic, charming, the kind of man who smiled like he had a secret you'd never guess. And maybe he did. At first, I thought he was just another family member, someone to welcome, someone to guide. But there was something in the way he told stories, the way he painted himself as the victim, the way he made everyone around him feel responsible for his happiness. I didn't see it immediately, and that was my first mistake. It started small. Missed payments, excuses, subtle exaggerations. I just missed them. Everyone forgets, I told myself. But then, like a drop of water that eventually hollows stone, patterns began to appear. Brian's social media posts, innocent at first, then increasingly desperate, painted him as a man struggling alone, abandoned by the family that should have cared. Friends messaged me, concerned. Strangers liked and shared his story. A simple misunderstanding was turning into a storm of perception. That night, I sat in my study, staring at my wall of engineering degrees and awards, thinking about a problem I'd faced countless times in my career. Break it down. Analyze every component. Solve it step by step. This was no different. The battlefield had shifted from polite dinners to online narratives, and I needed a strategy that Brian couldn't anticipate. I opened my filing cabinet, a habit from decades of systematic planning, bank statements, canceled checks, receipts, every financial interaction neatly documented. Tuition payments, medical bills, wedding expenses, loans quietly absorbed during Emily's illness. Everything accounted for. I realized something crucial. Brian had created a world built on lies, and I held the blueprint to dismantle it. I could feel it then, the shift from passive observer to active defender. This wasn't about anger, not yet. This was about strategy, precision, and evidence, a battle fought with facts instead of emotion. And if Brian thought he could manipulate everyone with a few clever posts, he had no idea what I was about to unleash. Because generosity without boundaries is dangerous, and someone had to draw the line.
The next morning, the calm I'd forced myself into shattered within seconds. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages from friends, family, even colleagues. Each ping carried the same tone of disbelief. "Richard, what's happening with Brian? He's saying you abandoned the family." I scrolled through his posts. Carefully crafted words, dripping with emotion, designed to make him look like a victim. Pictures of his struggles, selective snapshots of bills, staged moments of desperation, all curated to pull at hearts and sway opinions. Comments flooded in, people assuming the worst. He had the crowd convinced and the truth invisible. And yet, beneath his smooth narrative, there were cracks, tiny inconsistencies, dates that didn't align, statements that contradicted reality, subtle hints that things weren't as dire as he claimed. My engineer's mind noticed them immediately. Patterns emerged where others saw chaos. Brian was building a story on sand, and sand shifts under pressure. I didn't respond. Not yet. Emotion would be his weapon as much as mine. I needed precision. I needed facts. Every post he made, every message sent became a clue. I began compiling screenshots, labeling each by date and context. What looked like panic and vulnerability was actually a roadmap, Brian's own words, a testament to his manipulation. That afternoon, I took inventory of everything I had ever provided. It wasn't small. MBA tuition, $45,000 over 2 years. Wedding expenses, $30,000 in a single month. House down payment, $60,000 when his credit couldn't secure decent terms. Emily's medical bills during her fight with cancer, $85,000. Emergency loans, credit card bailouts, car payments. Every number, every transaction recorded meticulously. The total? Nearly $300,000 over 6 years. He had painted himself as a victim while living off my generosity. The audacity was staggering, but it also created an opportunity. Every lie he posted online was a chance to reveal the truth. Every claim of poverty was evidence of deception. And I had the proof, arranged in black and white clarity. By evening, I had constructed the skeleton of a plan. No impulsive reactions, no social media arguments, just one goal: expose the truth with absolute evidence, leaving no room for doubt. Brian had underestimated the value of documentation, the power of preparation, the inevitability of logic when applied relentlessly. As I closed my laptop, I realized the battle had already begun, but this time I was the one setting the terms. The first move in a war that had been brewing for years was no longer reactive. It was deliberate, calculated, and unstoppable.
Sunday morning arrived with a quiet intensity. Most people wake slowly, sipping coffee as the world stretches into the day. Not me. I was already at my desk, surrounded by stacks of documents, spreadsheets, and bank statements, a fortress of facts waiting to be deployed. Brian thought this would be easy. A few emotional posts, a few selfies showing struggle, and the world would rally to his side. But he didn't realize he was facing someone who thrived on structure, evidence, and precision. He was trying to fight an engineer on his own battlefield, and engineers don't guess, they calculate. I started with the bank records. Each transfer, each deposit, every tuition payment, hospital bill, and emergency loan carefully logged. Dates, amounts, purposes, nothing left ambiguous. By the end of the morning, I had a spreadsheet that would make any forensic accountant proud. Brian's narrative of desperation collapsed under the weight of facts. Next, I turned to social media. His Facebook posts about financial hardship were screenshotted, cataloged, and cross-referenced with my records. Expensive car repairs, luxury restaurant dinners, vacations, all funded by money I had provided over the years. By afternoon, I had what I called my truth matrix. Columns of dates, rows of transactions, screenshots aligned perfectly with bank statements, highlighting the stark contrast between his public claims and private reality. It was ruthless in its clarity. Anyone reviewing this matrix could see the story for what it really was: a systematic pattern of exploitation disguised as misfortune. But preparation wasn't enough. Strategy mattered. I picked up the phone and called Howard Brennan, my longtime estate attorney. "Howard, it's Richard. I need advice. Family, financial gifts, complications. Brian is posting false narratives online, and I have documentation proving otherwise." His pause was telling. Complications. How serious? I outlined everything. 6 years of financial support, escalating amounts, lifestyle maintenance, promises of repayment, and his public social media lies. Howard's tone shifted from curiosity to professional urgency. "Richard, you have a strong foundation here. Systematic exploitation, misleading public statements. This could fall under elder financial abuse statutes and defamation. Do you have comprehensive documentation?" I assured him I did. Everything meticulously logged, every bank transfer verified, every social media contradiction saved. "Excellent. Bring it Monday morning. We'll explore options for restitution, counterclaims, and legal enforcement. This isn't common in family disputes, but with your level of documentation, we can build an unassailable case." I hung up, adrenaline surging. The first move wasn't just about documentation, it was psychological. Brian thrived on control, on perception. By building my own fortress of facts, I had seized the narrative before he even knew what hit him. That night, as I reviewed the compiled files once more, a quiet satisfaction settled in. Every lie he had spread online, every dramatic post claiming abandonment or financial hardship would now serve as the evidence of his manipulation. Brian had created his own undoing, and I held the blueprint. For the first time in days, I allowed myself a brief smile. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt like I was winning. Monday morning arrived like a storm ready to break. I woke at 5:30 a.m., earlier than usual, and the house was quiet. Eerily quiet, as if it sensed the battle about to unfold. Coffee in hand, I reviewed my folder one last time. B. Miller Financial Recovery. All 6 years of systematic evidence, bank statements, screenshots, and social media contradictions. Every detail meticulously organized. By 7:45 a.m., I was at the courthouse, briefcase in hand, a quiet confidence settling over me. Brian? He was nowhere in sight, probably assuming this would be another day of public sympathy and viral posts in his favor. Little did he know the battlefield had changed. At 8 a.m., the filing office opened. I slid my comprehensive package across the counter. The clerk's eyes widened slightly as she flipped through page after page. "This is exceptionally thorough, Mr. Clark," she said, almost in awe. "Most family disputes don't come close to this level of documentation." I said nothing. Words were unnecessary. The evidence spoke for itself. Each bank transfer, medical bill, tuition payment, wedding expense, and emergency loan was documented, notarized, and certified. The narrative I had built over weeks now had legal weight. Brian's carefully curated social media persona, full of pity and victimhood, was about to meet reality. Once filed, the service of process was arranged to deliver the lawsuit papers to Brian immediately. While a court officer drove across town, I returned home, opening my laptop to Brian's viral post about family abandonment. Time to hit him where it hurt. Public perception. I crafted my post carefully. No anger, no defensiveness. Just facts, presented methodically. Screenshots of bank transfers, chronological records, and clear descriptions attached. I explained that legal action had been initiated due to systematic exploitation and false social media claims. The post went live at 9:30 a.m., tagged to reach everyone who had seen Brian's original narrative. Within minutes, notifications exploded. Mutual friends, family acquaintances, and even Emily's college friends began commenting, some shocked, some apologetic. Margaret Chen, who had doubted me, wrote first, "Richard, I had no idea about all this. I apologize for believing incomplete stories." I didn't stop there. Every phone call I made, every witness I contacted, neighbors, financial advisors, and friends added another pillar of support to the truth. By 11:15 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID flashed, Brian Miller. His voice was different, shaky, stripped of the usual arrogance. You filed a lawsuit?" "Yes, Brian. The court will determine what constitutes truth. Your public posts, your promises, and your private financial reliance on me will be evaluated." A long silence followed. Then his voice, stripped of all pretense, "What do you want? Money? I can pay some back." "No, Brian. All communication goes through my attorney now. You know his contact information." I hung up and returned to my social media campaign, posting evidence of his private threats alongside his public victimhood. The contradiction was clear. By 2 p.m., Brian's social media accounts were silent. The man who had dominated perception for days had been neutralized by one simple weapon: facts. Howard called at 3:30 p.m. "Richard, he knows he's lost. Your documentation is unprecedented in family financial disputes. Settlement discussions will follow. This level of preparation leaves him no room for negotiation on his terms." For the first time in days, I leaned back, allowing myself a quiet, controlled satisfaction. The battle had begun, and already the tide had shifted. Brian had underestimated me. Big mistake. By Tuesday morning, Brian's confidence was gone. Social media silence had replaced his usual flood of victimhood posts. I could almost hear him pacing, wondering how one man could dismantle years of carefully staged public perception.
I, on the other hand, moved methodically. My morning began with a review of every single bank statement and social media post again, cross-checking them for gaps or inconsistencies. Every tiny detail mattered. This wasn't just about money. It was about exposing manipulation with undeniable evidence. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang. Howard was on the line. "Richard, Brian just called me. He's asking for a meeting. He wants to settle before this escalates further." I smiled quietly. He had finally realized he was facing a wall he couldn't bulldoze with lies. "Set it up through you, of course. No direct contact. He needs to understand boundaries." Before the meeting, I prepared a digital timeline of all financial support, each payment highlighted, annotated, and correlated with Brian's contradictory social media claims. Weddings, vacations, car payments, hospital bills, every dollar matched with dates, bank records, and screenshots. The timeline told a story of systematic exploitation, not casual family assistance. The meeting took place in a small conference room. Brian slouched in his chair, designer sunglasses gone, face pale, hands fidgeting. I stayed calm, exuding quiet control. Howard opened the discussion, summarizing the key points of the case. Brian's voice trembled as he tried to explain. I thought you'd understand. Family helps family." Howard interrupted gently but firmly. "Brian, the evidence shows a 6-year pattern of escalating demands, promises of repayment that never materialized, and social media posts that directly contradicted your claims. This is no longer about family helping family. This is exploitation." Brian's eyes darted around the room. I didn't realize it would blow up like this." I spoke calmly, almost like an engineer explaining a system flaw. "Brian, the flaw was never in the system. The flaw was in your narrative. Lies can't withstand documentation and facts. Your social media manipulation made you predictable. I built a response that exposed it. The choice is simple. Settle or face formal court proceedings with comprehensive evidence against you." He sat silent, absorbing the reality. His confidence was gone, replaced by a quiet panic. Howard laid out the settlement proposal: repayment plan, public retraction of all social media posts, and cessation of defamatory statements. Brian's lawyer urged him to accept. Finally, he looked at me defeated. I'll do it." "Good," I said. "This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability and ensuring honesty moving forward." As I left the meeting, a sense of relief washed over me, but I knew the battle wasn't fully over. Legal filings, payments, and court oversight were next. The foundation had been set, but execution required patience, persistence, and vigilance. By the evening, my social media update went live, a brief, dignified notice of legal resolution in progress, backed by facts rather than emotion. Comments rolled in: shock, support, and apologies from those who had once blindly supported Brian. The tide had shifted, and I was finally reclaiming control of the narrative. Sitting on my deck that night, I watched the ocean waves. Emily's photo smiled from the side table. I whispered, "This is how we do it, sweetheart. Facts first, lies last." The battle lines had been drawn, the first strike executed, and the battlefield had irrevocably changed. Brian had chosen the wrong opponent, and now he would feel the full weight of methodical preparation and evidence-based strategy.
Monday morning arrived like the calm before a hurricane. The courthouse steps glistened under the first light, and I carried my briefcase with the weight of 6 years of meticulous documentation. Each folder inside represented not just money, but the truth that Brian had tried to bury under lies. Inside the filing office, I was first in line. The clerk looked at the stack of documents and raised an eyebrow. "This is
Extensive, she said, flipping through pages of bank statements, notarized affidavits, and screenshots. I've never seen a submission this thorough for a family dispute. I smiled faintly. Years of habit, I replied. Engineering taught me to document everything, and in this case, it's a lifesaver. By 9 a.m., the case was officially filed. The judge, a meticulous woman with a reputation for fairness, reviewed the preliminary documentation and immediately scheduled an expedited hearing. Brian's social media tactics had made the dispute public, but he was now facing the real power of formal legal scrutiny. At 10 a.m., I returned home to launch the second phase of my strategy, public narrative control. My laptop opened to Brian's viral posts full of emotional appeals and half-truths. I drafted a calm, precise response. I've seen concerning posts about our family situation. Here are the documented facts. Screenshots attached, every dollar traced, every promise of repayment accounted for. The post went live at 10:30 a.m., tagged to reach mutual friends and extended family. Within minutes, reactions poured in. Shock, apologies, and disbelief replaced Brian's manufactured sympathy. The tide had turned, and social media, the weapon Brian had wielded with confidence, now worked against him. By noon, Howard called with updates. Brian's panicked. He's asking about settlements. He didn't anticipate the depth of your documentation. I leaned back, savoring the moment. Years of financial planning, careful records, and disciplined organization had created an unassailable position. Brian's impulsive manipulation could not compete with systematic preparation. Afternoon brought a wave of private messages from friends and family who had witnessed Brian's theatrics but remained silent. Now, armed with evidence, they openly expressed support. Margaret Chen, Emily's college friend, wrote, "Richard, I had no idea about the financial support. Brian never mentioned this. I apologize for doubting you." Each message reinforced a simple truth. Facts speak louder than lies, and the public narrative was shifting rapidly. By evening, Brian's social media accounts were silent. No defense, no explanations, no theatrics. He had realized that he was cornered, not by anger, but by documentation and the methodical execution of justice. Sitting on my deck, I watched the sun set over the Pacific. Emily's photo caught the last rays of light. I whispered, "This is how we honored truth, sweetheart. Facts first, lies last." The battle had entered its most critical phase. Court proceedings, asset documentation, and legal enforcement awaited, but for the first time I felt in full control. Brian had underestimated the power of preparation, and now he would face the consequences of years of calculated exploitation. The stage was set, the storm was coming, and I was ready.
Tuesday morning brought a flurry of notifications. Brian's social media silence had broken, but the tone was desperate, not confident. Messages appeared from mutual friends, curious onlookers, and family members demanding explanations. He posted a vague, defensive note claiming misunderstandings, but the evidence I had posted undermined every word. By mid-morning, I received a call from Howard Brennan. His voice carried a mix of professional excitement and cautious warning. "Richard, Brian's lawyer just contacted me. They're panicking. He didn't expect the level of documentation you've prepared. They want a meeting to discuss a potential settlement before this goes to court." I leaned back, a slow smile forming. Let him panic. He's about to learn that manipulation only works if the other side is unprepared. Meanwhile, Brian's private messages to family members became more frantic. Texts demanding sympathy, voicing fear of losing his house, and implying that I was being cruel. But this time I had every message saved, timestamped, and ready to use. Every desperate plea became evidence of acknowledgement. He knew he had overstepped. By afternoon, the courthouse confirmed the official hearing. Judge Martinez would review the filings first thing Wednesday morning. Howard and I spent the rest of the day preparing a detailed visual timeline: bank transfers, social media posts, lifestyle inconsistencies, and emails. Each slide showed a clear story. Brian had received nearly $300,000 in support, claimed poverty publicly, and systematically exploited family generosity. That evening, I watched Brian's social media accounts. A new post appeared. this time directed at the media, asking them not to report on family drama. But reporters had already seen my evidence, and the narrative had shifted irreversibly. Public opinion was now on my side, and Brian's desperation only fueled suspicion. Around 8 p.m., Jessica called. Her voice quivered. "Richard, he's talking about losing everything. He said we can settle, but he's scared." I kept my tone calm. "Jessica, this isn't about fear. It's about accountability. Everything Brian did is documented. The court will handle the rest." I hung up and returned to my final preparations. I double-checked each folder, each certified bank document, each screenshot. Emily's photo on the desk seemed to glow in the lamplight, reminding me why I was fighting this fight. Not for revenge, not for anger, but for justice, fairness, and the truth. As night fell, a sense of anticipation settled in. Brian had built a castle of lies on social media, but castles crumble when foundations are weak, and I had just removed the ground beneath him. Wednesday morning promised confrontation. Courtroom doors, Judge Martinez, and Brian himself awaited. But for the first time, I was not nervous. I was prepared, armed with facts and ready to face the manipulator head-on.
Wednesday arrived like a precision-timed operation. I left my villa at 7:15 a.m., briefcase heavy with meticulously organized folders, certified bank statements, screenshots, and legal affidavits. Emily's photograph sat in the passenger seat, silently watching over me. Her smile reminded me this was about justice, not revenge. The courthouse lobby buzzed with routine activity, but to me, every tick of the clock carried anticipation. Brian was already there, sitting with his lawyer, a shadow of his confident, manipulative self. His designer sunglasses were gone, his posture slumped, the mask of arrogance replaced with a quiet desperation. For 5 days, he had dominated social media narratives, played the victim, and tried to manipulate friends and family. But now he faced documented reality. Judge Martinez entered promptly at 9 a.m., exuding calm authority. The courtroom fell silent. Howard Brennan, ever the composed strategist, laid out my meticulously prepared evidence in chronological order. 6 years of financial support totaling nearly $300,000, each transaction backed by certified bank records. Contradictions in Brian's public narrative, including social media posts claiming poverty while enjoying vacations, luxury shopping, and lifestyle expenses covered by my accounts. Timeline analysis showing a pattern of escalating demands, repeated promises to repay, and strategic exploitation of family sympathy. Brian's lawyer attempted a weak defense, claiming the money was given as gifts during times of grief. Judge Martinez's sharp gaze flicked between them and the evidence. "Counselor," the judge said, holding up screenshots of Brian's social media, "your client's statements contradict his own records. Promises of repayment versus public claims of poverty demonstrate deliberate inconsistency." I watched Brian shift in his chair. For the first time in years, he was silent, powerless against the fortress of facts we had built. Howard presented the timeline analysis, demonstrating how small financial requests gradually escalated into life-altering exploitation. Each slide, each graph, each documented transaction painted a single, undeniable picture. Brian had leveraged sympathy for personal gain. The judge's gavel came down. "Defamation and unjust enrichment are evident. Your client's public social media campaign has materially harmed Mr. Clark's reputation and demonstrates financial manipulation." Brian's attorney requested a recess. They returned 20 minutes later, visibly shaken. Settlement discussions ensued, proposing $150,000 restitution over 3 years, immediate public retraction of all social media posts, cessation of all defamatory communications. Judge Martinez looked at me. "Mr. Clark, do you accept this settlement?" I glanced at Brian's defeated face. No anger, no gloating, just the satisfaction of justice properly served. "Yes, Your Honor. Justice doesn't require destroying someone. It requires accountability." The judge formalized the agreement. Brian would face consequences for dishonesty, and all public narratives would now reflect truth, transparency, and responsibility. As I left the courthouse, a sense of calm washed over me. Emily's presence felt near, approving, not because I fought, but because I fought wisely and methodically. Outside, the world felt different. Social media, once a weapon in Brian's hands, now reflected the facts. Public opinion had shifted, support poured in, and family members who had doubted me now understood the reality. That evening, the required public retraction appeared on Brian's social media accounts, a concise, legally mandated admission of false and incomplete statements. For the first time, his influence had been neutralized by simple documentation and preparation. Sitting on my deck, glass of wine in hand, I looked at the sunset over the Pacific. Calm waves mirrored the sense of order I had restored to my life. 6 years of systematic exploitation had ended, not through anger, not through revenge, but through strategy, facts, and unwavering patience.
Thursday morning began with an unusual calm. No frantic messages, no manipulative texts, no social media storms. The war that had dominated my life for 6 years of exploitation was finally shifting toward resolution. I poured a cup of coffee and sat on my beck, watching the Pacific waves roll in, steady, unrelenting, yet calm in their rhythm. It reminded me of the systematic approach I had taken, persistent, methodical, and unstoppable. By 9 a.m., notifications on my phone began flooding in, not threats this time, but messages of gratitude and surprise. Emily's friends, who had once supported Brian blindly, reached out. "Richard, I had no idea about the financial support. Brian never mentioned any of this. I'm so sorry for believing incomplete information. This changes everything. Thank you for showing the truth." Even former neighbors and colleagues I hadn't spoken to in years contacted me, acknowledging the generosity they had never fully understood. It was vindication without vengeance, and the relief was palpable. The social media landscape had shifted dramatically. Brian's original posts portraying me as an uncaring, wealthy miser were now buried beneath screenshots of transactions, timelines, and evidence of his manipulation. Comments poured in, questioning his narrative, demanding explanations, and apologizing for accepting incomplete truths. One by one, the walls of deceit he had built crumbled under the weight of documented reality. Mid-morning brought a call from Jessica. Her voice was trembling, less theatrically manipulative and more genuinely anxious. "Richard, please. Brian says he might lose the house. Everything. Can we talk? Can we fix this like family?" I listened calmly. "Jessica, your husband exploited my grief over Emily's death to systematically extract nearly $300,000. He brought strangers into my home without permission and called police intervention family abandonment. This stopped being about family the moment he chose manipulation over honesty." Her tears were real this time, and I let her speak, but I made it clear all communication would now go through my attorney. Family loyalty did not extend to unchecked exploitation. By afternoon, the transformation was visible online. Brian's followers, once loyal to his carefully curated victim narrative, began retracting their support. The public reaction shifted almost overnight. Empathy turned to scrutiny, admiration into doubt, and sympathy into calls for accountability. Even casual observers commented on the stark contrast between his claims of poverty and documented evidence of financial dependence. Howard Brennan called at 3:30 p.m. with updates from the court. "Richard, Brian is panicking. He's requesting settlement discussions through counsel. He knows he's lost. This level of documentation in a family dispute is unprecedented." For the first time, I felt the power of preparation and strategy in a tangible, almost triumphant way. Brian, who had wielded manipulation like a weapon, was now facing the consequences of his own deceit. Evening brought a final call from an unknown number. Brian's voice was barely recognizable, stripped of confidence and replaced with desperation. "Richard, I need to talk. Can we meet, please?" I smiled quietly at Emily's photo on the side table. No meetings, no private negotiations. Everything through the proper legal channels. All communication goes through my attorney, Brian. You know his contact information.
I hung up and leaned back, watching the golden sunset paint the ocean. The villa felt like mine in every sense, legally, emotionally, and morally. My generosity had not been destroyed by boundaries. It had been refined, protected by wisdom and integrity. By nightfall, Brian's public retraction appeared on social media, concise and legally mandated. The posts admitted that his previous claims had been inaccurate and incomplete. The man who had once dominated narratives and manipulated friends, family, and followers was now reduced to court-ordered accountability. As I closed my laptop, a call came from David, Emily's nephew. His laughter was warm, genuine. "Uncle Richard, I saw the news. I wanted to call and say I'm glad you stood up for yourself. Can I visit next weekend?" "Absolutely," I replied, a sense of peace settling over me. For the first time in years, I could enjoy the simple pleasure of being asked rather than commanded, consulted rather than invaded. That night, I raised a glass of wine toward Emily's photo. "I think you'd approve, sweetheart. Generosity requires wisdom, and kindness needs boundaries." The ocean waves whispered against the shore, washing away the debris of manipulation, leaving clean sand for new beginnings. 6 years of systematic exploitation had ended, not through anger, but through preparation, facts, and steadfast integrity. The battle was essentially over. Justice had arrived, and peace had been restored.
Friday morning dawned with the quiet intensity of someone who had prepared for battle and now knew victory was near. I arrived at the courthouse at 7:45 a.m., briefcase in hand, each document meticulously organized: certified bank statements, notarized affidavits, screenshots of social media posts, and my chronological analysis of 6 years of systematic exploitation. Every detail mattered. Every number was a fact. Across the hall, Brian sat slumped in his chair beside a harried public defender. The designer's sunglasses, the arrogance, the confident smirk, all gone. He looked smaller, defeated, stripped of the carefully constructed facade he had maintained for years. Only 5 days ago, he had dominated the narrative. Now, faced with cold, undeniable evidence, he looked like the man behind the manipulations, ordinary, exposed, and accountable. Judge Martinez began reviewing the case. Her voice was calm but carried authority. "Mr. Clark, your documentation is extraordinarily comprehensive. Mr. Miller, your counsel indicates you wish to avoid trial through settlement discussions." Brian's attorney hesitated, then replied, "Your Honor, my client maintains these were family gifts given freely during times of mutual support and grief." The judge held up screenshots of Brian's social media posts. "Your client claims financial hardship, while bank records show systematic support from the plaintiff. Promises of repayment later, contradicted by claims of unconditional gifts. This pattern is undeniable." Howard presented the timeline analysis, showing escalating demands, repeated promises, and 6 years of financial manipulation. The judge leaned forward. Furthermore, the defamatory social media campaign constitutes both unjust enrichment and defamation. Brian's attorney requested a recess. 20 minutes later, they returned with a settlement proposal: $150,000 in restitution over 3 years, a public retraction on all social media platforms, and cessation of defamatory communication. I paused, looking at Brian's defeated face, then at Emily's photo. Her gentle, wise voice echoed in my mind. "Be kind, Richard, but not naive." "I accept the settlement, Your Honor. Justice doesn't require destroying someone, only holding them accountable," I said calmly. The judge entered the agreement into the official record. Brian would begin payments within 30 days or face asset seizure. His social media retraction was legally binding. Walking out of the courthouse, the weight of 6 years of manipulation lifted. Emily's presence felt near, not the weaponized memory Brian had twisted, but her genuine spirit, generous, wise, and protective. Back at my villa, I posted the court decision online, dignified, not vindictive. The response was immediate. Friends, family, even casual acquaintances expressed relief and admiration for the methodical, factual approach that had brought justice. Brian's social media accounts went silent. The man who had once commanded sympathy through manipulation now faced the quiet consequence of documented truth. That evening, David, Emily's nephew, called. "Uncle Richard, I saw everything. Can I visit next weekend?" "Of course," I replied. For the first time in years, I could enjoy genuine family interactions. Asked, not demanded. Planned, not coerced. Sitting on the deck with a glass of wine, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a profound sense of peace. The villa was mine, not just legally, but emotionally. Boundaries had preserved generosity, documentation had preserved integrity. Justice had been served, but in a way that allowed kindness to remain intact. The ocean whispered against the shore, erasing the past's debris, leaving a clean slate. 6 years of exploitation ended not with anger, but with methodical preparation, integrity, and firm boundaries. Brian would learn accountability. I would enjoy my retirement, welcome genuine family visits, and maintain the spirit Emily loved, now tempered with wisdom. As I raised my glass to Emily's photo, I whispered, "We did it right, sweetheart. Facts, preparation, integrity. That's how we honor generosity without being taken advantage of." Peace had returned. Justice wasn't coming, it had arrived. And for the first time in years, I looked forward to tomorrow with uncompromised hope. The war was over. The lesson was clear. Generosity paired with wisdom, kindness balanced with boundaries, and preparation grounded in facts can overcome manipulation and deceit. Life could now move forward not as a battlefield, but as a space for genuine connection, respect, and renewed trust.